Hello, and welcome back to another episode of MurdersADrag. I know, I'm still here. Isn't that crazy? This is episode 14, which is like 2 full weeks episodes right there. Listen, that's an accomplishment. We're accomplished. We're happy about it. Last week's episode, let me sit back. I noticed some quirks. My camera angle was off. And bear with me, I'm still using a phone camera, but this should be the last video that you see on a camera like this. But I'm not saying the camera quality is bad, I'm just saying it could be better. And I have it rigged up on some stand right now. That's not ideal. We're not in the ideal position. This week's episode and all episodes for this foreseeable future are going to revolve around the murder of Black queer people in our community. It is really important to bring these stories to the spotlight right now, bring them to the foreground, and after knocking out last week's video and sharing Kevin's story with everybody, I want to dedicate this channel to be a place where I can amplify those stories and use my platform as a place that I can do important things, do what's right, and do what's important for my community and the people that I love. Call out injustice where I see it and do something about it as much as I can. So for this week's case, I'm going to be discussing the murder of Mark Carson back in 2013 in Greenwich Village, New York. Mark Carson was born in 1981 in New York. He attended Legacy High School and graduated around 1998. These dates are approximate because I read a lot that Mark was private about his life, but didn't realize just how private meant. I respect that 100%, but it did make it a little bit difficult for me to find exact dates. After he graduated high school in or around 98, he went on to attend the Borough of Manhattan's community college to further his education there. Mark's aunt, Florence Boopers, or Buppers? I like to think Boopers because I like that last name. She remarked that his family was always very accepting of Mark's sexuality. Mark was a gay man, and she's quoted saying that their family's general attitude towards it was that family is family no matter what, which I thought was very touching because you don't really see that in a whole lot of families. You're fortunate if your family feels that way. As I said, Mark wasn't really the type of person that wanted to share a whole lot about his personal life with very many people, if anybody at all. Many people close to him didn't know much more than that Mark would go on dates. They described them as little dates here and there. No serious relationships really in his life that he was public about or that he'd let anybody know about. Again, I really relate to that and I respect that. I entirely respect that. Although Mark was a private person, he by no means was an antisocial person. He actually loved going out in Greenwich Village, Greenwich Village is the gay community in New York City. Kind of how P-Town would be the gay community in Boston. That's Greenwich Village to New York City. One of the sort of recurring themes that I found among the memories that Mark's friends had of him was that they all shared their first experience out in gay nightlife and gay culture with Mark, meaning that he would sort of show all of his friends the gay nightlife and bring them out in their first experience of gay culture. Because kind of like I was talking about in my last episode, it's really overwhelming your first time that you step out into the gay nightlife scene or into the like active gay culture scene, because there's just a lot going on and you need to kind of find where you fit in all of it. And Mark was kind of the leader that would bring people into that. And he was confident enough in the scene that he had been frequenting since high school that he knew he could show his friends that area. His younger gay friends who were new to coming out or who were new to the gay scene would all go to Mark to show them around Greenwich Village. Back when Mark was in high school, on his weekend evenings, he would frequent the Christopher Street Piers in Greenwich Village, and he'd bring friends with him. And he would also go often to the Harvey Milk High School's after-school program that was dedicated to helping LGBTQ youth. One of Mark's teenage best friends, who is a radio personality now named Alonzo, actually recalled a memory where Mark brought him to Greenwich Village and is quoted saying, "He introduced me to the whole gay culture," which is a really big thing that you can do for one of your gay friends. Mark was definitely not afraid ever to be himself under any circumstances. He was described as being very fabulous with the clothes that he wore and really just not giving a what people thought about him. But he was also not somebody that you could walk over. If you did have something negative to say about him, he would call you out and he would ask you why you felt that way and why you had something to say to him about him being happy and living his life the way that he wanted to. Before I really get into more of the story, I want to stress just how important this area is. Greenwich Village is very important to LGBT people, especially LGBT people from New York, because it's considered one of the birthplaces of the gay rights movement, the LGBT rights movement, because in Greenwich Village is Stonewall, that I covered a few episodes ago. And if you don't know, Reader's Digest version is the Stonewall riots were mainly transgender black women rioting against police brutality in their gay bars. And those riots lasted about 3 nights, and it sparked national attention, media attention, and really got the ball rolling for LGBT rights. The Village is also just historically an LGBT-friendly neighborhood. LGBT people have always lived in the Village and have always kind of called it home. They've been able to walk out in the street and hold their significant other's hand without being afraid of being beaten to death or arrested or, the plethora of things that can happen to an LGBT individual for just living their life unapologetically and out of hiding. So the Village was kind of the place, it was the Village where you could be yourself. It was, it's the Village. So that's kind of why Greenwich Village is so important. The Reader's Digest version of why Greenwich Village is so important to the LGBT community. And I wanted to emphasize that. You'll see why in a few minutes. This story begins fairly early in the evening, especially fairly early in the evening for Greenwich Village and the gay community. We like to stay up late. On May 17th, 2013, after working another one of his notoriously long shifts as the manager of a frozen yogurt kiosk in the prime location of Grand Central Terminal, he was probably so freaking busy all the time. Mark went out to the Village for a night out to celebrate the weekend and brought his friend Danny Robinson along. Early on in the evening, around 11:30, Danny and Mark are walking around Greenwich Village, getting kind of close to the bar that they want to get to, when meanwhile, Elliot Morales is at Anissa on 6th Avenue. Elliot comes walking by the front window of the restaurant and decides to stop and start urinating on the front window. Elliot is a generally shady character already. He's been to prison for attempted murder. He's got a pretty long rap sheet, and he's just never proven at any point in his life that he wants to be a good stand-up guy. And this night's not unlike most of his other nights. He was belligerently drunk walking around, just trying to cause as much trouble as he possibly could, and just be a in general. When the owner finally came out of the restaurant and told him that he needed to get the hell out of there, he got combative and started hurling gay slurs at the staff at the restaurant, the patrons at the restaurant, bartenders, the owner, and causing a problem. I think that's what he wanted out of it all, honestly, because he was saying while he was in there, "Did you see what I was doing?" And he taunted them and told them to call the police, among calling them a lot of names that I don't like to say. While the staff was arguing with him, as things started to escalate, he lifted up his gray hoodie and brandished his silver pistol in his waistband, sort of non-verbally threatening them with his gun. Move. Just around then, Mark and Danny come walking around the corner and walk into the scene not knowing anything about what's going on, when Elliot immediately turns to them, and like I said, Mark liked to dress the way that he dressed. He was a gay man. He dressed fabulously. His shoes were always fantastic. His outfits were always fantastic. He was 100% on point all the time. When Elliot saw the men, he said, "Look at these they look like gay wrestlers," which is probably the dumbest insult that I've ever heard,